Welcome to the compilation for this week. Are you looking for a video to engage your thoughts and inspire your imagination? Your search is ended because we're happy to share with you a selection of stories from this week that cover a wide range of intriguing subjects. We're about to go on a delightful and illuminating adventure together, so take a moment to relax, get comfortable, and immerse yourself in the following few minutes. To guarantee that you never miss out on our most recent content updates, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Story 1. I was in Lowe's one morning right after they opened. There was a woman at the service desk having a complete meltdown, yelling and screaming because Lowe's didn't have a licensed contractor there at the store for her to hire. She apparently woke up that morning and decided she needed a deck like that the same day and thought she could just go to Lowe's and have someone immediately start building a deck. It was dead, so I stood with the cashier listening to the show. They ended up having to call the police to get her to leave. Sometimes I wonder what it feels like to live every day with that much innate entitlement. The power and unearned confidence must be a little intoxicating, no? I had an uncle on my spouse's side do this with groceries. Went off the rails that they expected him to pay. He was not entitled. He was having a mental breakdown due to a medication he had just started taking. People who walk off in a huff after arguing something stupid like the contractor bit above, I would definitely call entitled. This lady stayed until they had to call the cops? Something is wrong there. I had something like this happen to me. I started seeing a psychiatrist for the first time. He interviews me and ends up prescribing medication. I ask what side effects to expect. Oh, nothing major. You probably won't notice anything. The next week, I'm in my favorite deli, and I have a full-on screaming meltdown because I thought, incorrectly, I had been overcharged by $1. I spent about half an hour sobbing in the dining area before I was able to pull myself together enough to walk home. That night, I looked up the medication online, and the very first side effect warning was for unmanageable bursts of rage. I dropped that psych and eventually found a much better one, but I never could bring myself to go back to that deli. I bet if you had gone back and apologized explaining the situation, it would have been all good. People are generally pretty forgiving despite what social media would have you believe. If they were a regular and this happened all of a sudden, they might have even had a feeling something was up. Hey man, sorry about a couple weeks ago. My shrink gave me some smeggy pills. I apologize. I hope I can continue eating at this fine delicatessen. I was just enjoying a succulent Chinese meal. Unhand me, sir. Can't confirm. I was in retail, and once someone ordered a book from our website that was out of print and lost their cool. Our website pulls from 3 major national and international databases, so we can only be as accurate as they are, but no amount of apologies and explanation would calm him. He ended up sending an email full of swearing and just on the edge of threats. We were obviously shook up and felt like smeg and spent the day assuring ourselves that guy was a massive tool who was overreacting, and we weren't in fact the worst people and company on the planet. A week later, after we got over it, he sent us another email apologizing and explaining he had a brain tumor which affected his moods. Immediate forgiveness. Honestly, life is hard enough. Forgiving someone where appropriate and moving on takes much less energy than holding on to grudges and smeg, especially if there's a chance you'll see that person again. I sometimes get incredibly furious about people's junk, but anytime they own up to it and genuinely apologize, it's instantly forgiven. I hold grudges, but really only against people who never own up to their actions. I think that just comes from what everybody sees in TV or movies, like the bad guy is always a jerk to someone, like in school or in a restaurant or something, and they end up getting banned for life, and that's like the plot point that always sticks with you at the end of the movie. There's never really anything about what happens afterwards, what moves on. And I think we just need to realize that life moves on, and it's not just a movie. Story 2. Uber driver. Once, I had a girl I picked up from a karaoke bar that was obviously upset/distressed. Asked if she was okay. Yeah, I just did karaoke. Oh, that's pretty cool. I did a song for my dad that perished a year ago. Aw, that's sweet of you. Nothing else was said until I got her home, which was only a couple blocks away. As I pulled in, this is what she said. I'm not going to give you a bad rating for this, but you could have been more emotionally available for me. I'm sorry? And had to stop myself from bursting into laughter. I felt bad for her, of course, but that was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard from a passenger. Especially prefacing it with, I'm not going to give you a bad rating for this, but... Second story. Picking up a lady, she was distressed. I asked if I could do anything for her, and she said, not unless you can take back the last 40 years of my life. It was a very silent, awkward ride. I'm not going to give you a bad rating for this, but I'm not going to give you a particularly good one either. Not exactly average, but not quite above or below either. Every now and then I get people that ordered their ride too early and ask me to wait 15 minutes or come back later. They usually get very huffy when I ask for money. There was one time years ago, there was a guy who lived across the street from me whose girlfriend would always just scream at him whenever she was over. One time, it was at like 2 a.m., I saw the guy sitting on the curb looking deflated with his head in his hands while the girl would get halfway into a cab, then go back out and yell at him some more. I felt so bad for the poor cab driver, but I kind of hope he charged her an extra idling fee or something. Anyway, I finally threw my window open and bellowed out, "Oh my word, break up with her already so I can sleep." I think he finally came to his senses because I never heard from her again after that. Every cab I've ever used started the meter if they had to wait. For me, it was waiting while I loaded luggage. Seems fair to me. She can go see her therapist for that. Hear me out. A therapist that picks you up and therapists you on the way to your destination? We can make so much money here. It's like going to a funeral? Let's get a professional here to help you work through all your emotions while they drive you to the worst day of your life. This is an incredible idea. We could call it Wheels and Feels. I used to do rideshare driving, and I just don't have the patience. Sometimes you just don't have the patience. If they're polite and ask you if you can wait a couple of minutes extra, that's cool. But honestly, you don't make money from the time. You get a little money from the time. You get more money from the distance. So asking you to wait a little bit more and saying, well, you're getting paid, aren't you? Not as much as it's worth to stick around, no. Story 3. I used to work in a local cafe/newsstand/convenience stores type spot. We also had a Ticketmaster outlet for a bit. Our small town had an annual concert that usually ran 2 or 3 nights. It was really popular with the local folks, so it brought in a ton of foot traffic with people buying tickets. My boss was honestly a small business mastermind. That was the extent of our involvement. We sold and printed gate passes. One night, on one of the events, I was closing the store as usual at 10 p.m. An irate woman called wanting to file a noise complaint about the concert. I was like, "Ma'am, you must have the wrong number. This is a local cafe." She insisted that she was filing an official noise complaint and demanded to speak to the owner right now. 10 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, he's not here. He also isn't the police and doesn't deal with noise complaints. Also, it's only 10 p.m. and this concert has been widely advertised for months. She then went on a wild rant that we needed to do something about the noise since we sold tickets. She wouldn't let me off the call and was going berserk. I told her I was going to disconnect since we had nothing to do with the event or the noise. She called back multiple times, and finally I just let the phone ring. Was still ringing when we locked up. Ma'am? You okay? There was a summer block party put out by some of the local businesses. Brought a metric ton of foot traffic onto the street. One of the shop owners lost her damn mind and sent really nasty emails to the organizers and wanted the city to pull the permits last minute. She left some goofy note on her shop's door about how she was losing revenue from closing for the day. It was her decision to close. As far as I could tell, she just didn't want to have to walk as far as the street was closed. Some people are so stubborn they'll inconvenience themselves because they can only see whatever limited set of options they thought up themselves. Narrator. As it turns out, she was not okay. At all. I mean, if you have a complaint, there is the right person to complain to. Maybe it was easier for this person to call up the store. Who knows? Maybe she had problems with the police because the police wouldn't talk to her because she kept calling them and harassing them, making too many complaints about stuff. How much do you want to bet that's probably what happened? Story 1. Grocery prices. Right? Is anyone else finding it harder and harder to just afford to live month on month? Definitely. The prices got high, but packets were smaller. The former normal size of everything are now family size in my country. I only recently noticed packs getting smaller. I didn't realize it was so widespread. Shrinkflation is the term. In the UK, this is known as the Freddo Index, or Fredonomics. It's a crime that the Freddo used to be a 10p treat, 1999, shaped like a fat frog. Now even the frog has lost weight and looks like a malnourished poverty child. Yet they're asking for over 30p. Madness. Edit. Changed 5p to 10p due to error. They aren't even normal size. They're smaller than normal size and calling them family size. It sucks. Yes, but also Aldi and Trader Joe's are my happy places. Yes, all this for the win, but still they've even had to creep some prices up. Nowhere near as bad as the usual grocery stores, but still not like it used to be. I shop pretty much only at Aldi since I've still seen a 50 to 75% increase in what I spend there buying similar things. My family loves this heat and eats carnitas tacos filling from Kroger. When I started buying it 3 years ago, it was $5.99. It's now $9.99. I'm just floored by this smeg. A decade ago, McDonald's still had a value menu. Now they have a special deal where if you buy 2, you can get a McDouble for only $2. Literally twice the price it used to be. It's getting extremely hard to justify getting fast food anywhere now. For me, the most noticeable was Little Caesars raising their $5 hot and ready. They covered it up by having all these different options now, but I think the standard hot and ready with reduced toppings, as you now have to pay extra to get the amount of toppings you used to, is like $7.50 plus. Crazy bread is way too expensive to justify getting ever now. McDonald's draw was cheap food, not good food, and pretty much the same for all fast food. At some point, they'll be forced to realize people did it out of convenience, and even with shrinkflation, people will start to find packing their own lunch for road trips and such is now the better option. There are going to be generations of children growing up where their parents will adamantly refuse to let them try fast food when you add on the unhealthy aspect of it to the rising cost. And their initial reaction is going to be to make meals cost $20+ first. It used to be, not too long ago, that fast food places were going 2 different routes. They were trying to go for a gourmet kind of feel, and that could justify the bigger prices, or they were going heavy into value menus. McDonald's did that for quite a while, and I think they still do that, but it does seem like all the restaurants now are just upping their prices, and value menus are starting to get smaller and smaller. Story 2. Farmers need to subscribe to their tractor these days. It's sad how sarcastic this sounds, and then you find out it's true. The worst part is farmers live in rural areas. Like, that's just how it is. Guess where John Deere's certified technicians live? Nowhere fracking close. So if your tractor breaks down, it might be a week before you get it fixed. And even if it's a simple, easy fix, the tractor knows when a tech didn't fix it and will lock down the tractor. This thread is fascinating. And you're right, it's totally linked to right to repair. Farmers won a case against John Deere earlier this year. I believe John Deere settled. They made some key concessions. It was to head off legislation that would prevent pipelining, disallowing farmers to repair their own machines and voiding warranties at harvest time when a working tractor or harvester is essential. The settlement was meant to head off the rising support for farmers. But it did not really help the plight of small farmers who, as a group, have a higher self-unaliving rate than veterans. They still are held hostage by several large corporations. These greedy good old boys are in cahoots. What sucks is that they have to buy it first, too. It's not like it's just a monthly fee or a lease. They're dropping north of $1 million, then paying a monthly fee for the privilege of using the expensive thing. Even worse than that, they subscribe to their seeds, too, and are barred from collecting and using any seeds from the plants. This sounds so dystopian. Why is this allowed? Because those seeds are patented by the company that designed them. Look up Monsanto seed litigation. They sue a ton of people for using their patented seeds. What Nightfox said. So you might ask, why don't they just get non-patented seeds from somewhere else? Because those non-engineered plants aren't resistant to the most commonly sprayed pesticides, herbicides. So you might decide, frack Monsanto and plant some heirloom varieties, but your neighbors spray down their fields and unalive all your smeg in the process. These companies are constantly creating new chemicals that kill regular plants and then selling the seeds for new varieties that can survive being sprayed with those chemicals. It's a huge racket. I didn't know about the seeds, but I did know about the whole thing with the machines and really the kind of the right to repair thing. That has gone over and spilled over into the things like Apple being this sort of walled garden when you have to get your battery replaced. And there's a lot of people that want you to just rent all your appliances now. I'm sure that's creeped in for a long time now. Story 3. They're trying to turn pen and paper role-playing games into fracking monthly subscriptions. I know it's slightly niche, but Hasbro Co. has every intention of destroying D&D as we know it, and it's very much in this trend. I work in the selling part of the industry, and it's completely out of hand. Everyone wants a cut, and another cut, and then some more. They want their cake and eat it too, and to have their neighbor's cake and eat that too. I've watched several people outright quit Magic and D&D in the last 5 months because of these absurd policies. And it's affecting other things too. Magic the Gathering is up to 8 releases a year. That's more than one every 2 months. There's zero pragmatic reason for that. The meta development and the design teams won't be able to keep up, and it's all because they want more money now. The pursuit of eternal growth is quite literally destroying the ingenuity and beauty of the industry in real time. It's fracking depressing that they're taking these beloved IPs that have endured for decades and could easily endure decades more if treated with consideration and respect, and stripping every dollar from them that they can before they leave their desiccated husks to rot because they drove the entire community away. Well said. Some things just aren't meant to have unlimited growth, and it drives me nuts. At the end of the day, these cards are cardboard. Not diamond encrusted, not gold, cardboard. There's a limit to that, and it drives me wild that private citizens are expected to adhere to a budget, but companies are not. Not making enough money on your cardboard? Time to make cuts and Live within your means. At some point, the profit margin is the profit margin, and there's no more copper to be wrung from the penny. Supply and demand, valuable materials, etc., used to mean something, and I think we can all agree if there's less of something, it should be worth more. Not the case today. We're already seeing that. Disney just released that new collectible card game, Locarna, something like that, and there's already scalpers that are selling all those that first run of cards. So much so that they're producing new cards. But yeah, we're seeing that. I was there when Magic the Gathering first came out, and there was just a frenzy just to collect on that too. But D&D, there are countless other role-playing game systems over D&D, and some of them have come together to form an alliance where their stuff will still remain open source. So thankfully, there's still that option. Story 4. Already out of hand and has been for a while but keeps getting worse. Advertisements everywhere. I find the worst part is the repetition. In one evening of TV watching, I might see the same commercial 20 or 30 times. Sometimes the same commercial plays back to back or twice within one break. There should be laws against this kind of spam. It's brainwashing. I grow to despise certain commercials. I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Why do we put up with it? And worse is that we pay for this smeg. I can't stand the earworm jingles. There should definitely be a law restricting the number of times the same commercial can be used within a time frame. What kind of damage is this doing to kids and developing brains? If I see or hear an obnoxious, intrusive ad that annoys me, I'll note the product and avoid ever buying it. Frack billboards. Comparing a state that allows them and a state that doesn't, I'd much rather live in a state that doesn't. There are states that don't. Hawaii, Alaska, Vermont, and Maine have laws prohibiting all outdoor billboards. These laws were passed in 1927, 59, 68, and 77, respectively. In 2011, the Portland Press-Herald polled Mainers and found that 94% opposed legislation that would allow billboards. Washington state banned billboards on motorways in 1961. Oregon has had a cap on outdoor billboards since 71, meaning no new billboards can be constructed unless an existing one is taken down. Washington State, Oregon banned them. Story 1. My ex is begging for the cats back. She left us 3 to smash some dude halfway around the world. When she came back, she had the audacity to ask for the cats back after her 4-year hiatus in the country. So satisfying to tell her to go curse herself. Oh, similar story. Had an abusive girlfriend beg for a dog. She picked a cute little guy, got him for her. She proceeded to never take care of him and always complain about him just doing things puppies do. She would talk about getting rid of him and how there's something wrong with him. There isn't, he's great. So I took care of him, trained him, bonded, and he became my dog, really. After I dumped her because I finally was done with the abuse, she really calls me to ask when I'm bringing over her dog. I told her, she doesn't have a dog. I do. And I hung up. This is almost exactly the same story as my ex-wife. She left us 8 months after we got the dog, and the dog is now 10 years old. He saved my life when I was in a bad place years ago. I owe that dog everything. Truly my best friend. Same here. Dog stays with us. You chose to leave your family, and that includes the dog. I actually won a restraining order against her and her boyfriend, and the judge specifically awarded custody of the dog to me. And as another said above, that dog basically saved my life. He's my buddy. Sounds like that dog is loyal, unlike some other mongrels you know. Ex had to have a cat. I'm a dog person, but the cat was pretty cool. Well, the cat clung to me and became my little shadow. He'd grab the cat from my lap and try to force it to hang out with him, but she wasn't having it. He never took her to the vet, cared if she had fresh water, nothing. I did everything, and at the time I worked more than him, too. He ended up yanking, so I kicked him out. He threatened to take the cat, and she hissed and scratched him. I loved that cat. I had her for another 4 years. Still miss that sassy floof. Did the same thing, except I got him a cat to help with his depression. But after 6 years of abuse and smeg, and figuring out he was a self-centered narcissist that just used me for a roof and illicit substance money, I left and took my fur baby with me, who, along with his new little brother, another fur baby, are the lights of my life. I adopted a dog that belonged to my neighbors. There were a family with kids, but they all treated the dog poorly. The guy was especially bad, and he used to just roam the street. Eventually, they left, and they dumped the dog a long way away. We found this out from people who knew them. The dog managed somehow to find his way back to our place as he used to come play with our dog. By then, he was starving and was so matted we had to get a professional groomer to carefully get under all the mats to clip him. It took ages for him to eat properly without vomiting because he'd been so starved. Got him good and loved up and kept him. Vet told me he'd had blows to the ribs and jaw and had suffered breaks to his ribs. Anyway, months go by, and I bump into the woman from the family in a shop who tells me I've got her kid's dog. I told her she's welcome to him if she'd like to pay back everything I put into vets and care for him. She turned her back and walked away. He lived to the age of 17 plus, was the most beautiful little black poodle, and passed away peacefully in bed as a very old man. Rest in peace, precious Benji. Oh, that last one is so cute. It's amazing how animals really affect our lives. And in a way, it's great that all of these weren't kids. I could just imagine any of these situations being even more tragic if it was someone using the kids or threatening to take away the kids to hurt the other person. But dogs are just as precious, dogs and cats, and they're just as really essential to our well-being many times. Story 2. Scripted pranks. But what if it's a scripted prank with that dumb female AI voice narrating what you can already see for yourself? Does it make it any better? Oh, only if, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 is drowning out all other noise in the video too. Just pranks in general. Being a tool but thinking it's okay because it's just a prank, bro. The worst ones are the ones that aren't even pranks. It's just straight up being a tool to people. I remember seeing one where this pretty white boy was going around asking people if he could smash them in the butt, because that's hilarious, I guess. One of the people responded by punching pretty white boy in the face, knocking him out, and I'm pretty sure knocking his teeth out too. You could see visible blood. One of PWB's teeth was missing, and his jaw was visibly unhinged. Pretty white boy's response? It was just a joke. I got punched over a joke. Curse you. You got punched because you were being a jerkwad. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Enjoy your dental work. Nah, there can actually be good, solid pranks that make everyone laugh. I was part of one many years ago. Was working at a remote camp in the wilderness. While the camp OSS is associated with the Lutheran Church, we're extremely liberal and don't take ourselves too seriously. Anyhow, we were evacuated one summer due to wildfires. The group of us that stayed behind, with the blessing of the Forest Service, referred to ourselves as the Left Behind crew, after the post-rapture movies and books that were popular among evangelicals at the time. It's not something that we believe at all. Anyhow, after the evacuation was lifted, we started bringing our people back in by bus. When they got back to camp, all the first bus found were small pieces of clothing laying in the street and a couple of fallen over welcome home signs. We were all hiding in a neighboring building. We let them be confused and examined the piles for maybe a minute before walking out and welcoming them back for real. Everyone laughed and no one was hurt. That was a good prank. Yeah, I agree. There can be good pranks as long as it's something that's fun for everybody. I've been the victim of several pranks before where it was just people being mean and trying to prove that I was stupid or something, and I'm sure everyone's had that, but ones where everyone is involved, Like this last one? That's hilarious. I love it. There should be more like that. Story 3. Hollywood award shows. Celebrities patting each other on the back. Sometimes they slap each other's face. Willpower. Honestly, I think the nominees should have to fight for the awards instead of voting for the winners. Last one standing takes the award. I'd like to thank the Academy, my MMA instructor, for preparing me for this award, and now I will have to thank my oral surgeon for putting my teeth back in later. Gotta go before I bleed on my Versace in the shoes. I can't remember who made the shoes. My head hurts. Gotta go now. Bye! The Academy Awards have been around since 1927. It being televised didn't start until 1953, and it's a way to monetize an annual event. The point of the awards was never to be a television event, so it's an extension of what was already taking place. It still gets 20 million viewers annually, which is a huge response, even though in its heyday it would get 40 million. That was a time when there were very few movies available to watch per year, and there were only 4 major television studios and no internet to watch clips if you missed something, so television in general was a bigger event. A friend of mine attended the Grammys at one point. They didn't have enough people going, so they paid him to be an extra, put him in a rented tux, told him when to clap, and gave him some cheap food under a tent after the fact. He wasn't allowed to talk to the celebrities, though. I got paid in food and to watch a once popular musician group for a political fundraiser years back for 3 hours of my time. Guess they needed bodies to make him seem more popular. Pretty much the rules were to stay seated during the event, unless going to the bathroom, and not tell anyone how much I donated to be there if asked. I had planned out that my father paid for it, so I don't know. No one asked, though. It was a 1K plate dinner minimum. I worked on a campaign back in 2004, and almost 15 years later, they contacted me out of the blue, and I thought they were asking for a donation, but just needed bodies. Send me a link to the dress code. I did not vote for any of them, but the food was good. I ate so much bacon-wrapped asparagus that I'm not sure how I lived till the next day. Yeah, if Grammys actually really reflected the best acting choice, they would probably tank in the ratings. And yeah, I don't really much care for them either. I don't know of any award show that would actually really be worth the actual point of going through it, come to think of it. What about you? Story 1. At the end of my first week at a new school, the teacher handed out slips of paper with our current grade. I had a solid A at my old school, but the teacher said I had an F. I asked her why. She said I didn't hand in the quarter project. I reminded her that I had just moved to the school. She said she would give me the weekend to do it. The project was to interview a longtime local resident and write a paper about their experiences. The articles were being collected for a book she was writing. I failed the class. My wife relocated to a new school midway through her senior year. Her math teacher wanted her to make up all of the classwork she missed from that class, on top of all regular assignments going forward. After struggling for weeks, the guidance counselor's failed attempts at fixing the situation and unwillingness of the teacher to budge on her ridiculous requests, my wife dropped out. She was a straight-A student up to that point. Some teachers are fracking monsters. When my mom changed schools in 3rd grade, the first thing they did on her first day was a spelling test. When the teacher was grading them, she got to my mother's test, stood up, screamed at my mom, "In this school, we use cursive." My mom didn't know cursive, but the teacher said that wasn't an excuse and gave her detention. She stressed my mom out so badly that after a couple months of school, Mom ended up in the hospital with severe stomach ulcers. How do these people become teachers? Those sorts of stories make me hope if I ever have kids, they know to come to me with that and trust it'll get sorted immediately. Some teachers are fracking monsters. I come from a country that has 3 official languages. I was raised in 2 of them, so I was fluent. But as an Army brat, I had lived in another country for 8 years, so I had never been in contact with the third. Well, the third country is mandatory in school and from a certain age. So when I moved back there, I had to take the class. And I sucked at it. I learned and learned, but I couldn't get it right. So here I was, perfect or near perfect scores at other subjects, but according to this teacher, I was dumb as rocks. Because how could I fail at the official language of my own country? I would have to be stupid, right? Well, I buckled down and, unbeknownst to my parents, studied till 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning as a 9-year-old and failed again and again, every time getting punished and ridiculed by the teacher. That guy is the sole reason I stopped loving going to school, that all my other grades failed, just so he could prove to my parents how stupid I was. For some reason, this middle-aged dude took it upon himself to destroy this 9-year-old kid's life. I still blame him for fracking up my school career, all because I couldn't learn this one subject. Sucked the joy out of my life for a long time. When I was 9 and moved from an area of my country that is completely English-speaking to an area of my country that is heavily bilingual and students were heavily immersed in French from kindergarten, my first day of French class at my new school, the teacher told me we were only allowed to speak French the whole class period, and I would get detention for speaking English. I didn't know how to say a single sentence in French. I could tell you that chat meant cat, and I could count to 10. I didn't even know how to ask to go to the bathroom. They tried to hold me back a grade, despite me having high marks in every other class. After that, we moved every year, and every new school I went to had a different French dialect taught, formal French, Quebecois, even Haitian once, and at a different difficulty level. I never got a consistent French education. I now live in a predominantly French area, still in my 30s, and still can't speak it. All my neighbors are French, the stores are all in French, and most jobs are bilingual. Even completely surrounded by it on a daily basis, it just doesn't compute anymore. My brain seems to have long lost the ability to wrap my brain around it. Reminds me of a professor in university. From an analytical programming course, we could either do an exam, which was known to be hideously hard, or do a project thesis out of a collection of tasks he provided. One important rule was that we had to adhere religiously to his provided formatting, and to not put our names anywhere in the text and code we handed in. We were to only write it on the CD-ROM, because he would just compile all the projects and sell them as a book. Oh, just a lot of douchebaggery going on in there. At least 2 stories in there where they were getting free work from the students. That's awful. And how are these people expecting someone to just hit the ground running in something they didn't know about? That one where the 9-year-old is staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning to study is particularly awful. Story 2. I had a teacher accuse me and a classmate of cheating on an exam because we had the same answer. It was a multiple choice test, and she was upset we both had it correct. I'm sorry you don't suck at teaching as much as you think you do. Turns out you just suck at stats. This kind of reminded me of a stats joke or story or whatever you want to call it. 5 students who had an upcoming math test were having too much fun on a trip they were on, so they decided to skip the test and make up a lie to the teacher that they had a flat tire and could not get back. It worked, and the teacher said, "No problem, you can take your makeup." So they finally get back and take the makeup, happy that they're getting away with their ruse. They completed the first sheet of the exam and then noticed it was all worth just 20 points. They flipped over to the next page, a single question worth 80 points. Which tire was flat? Note to self, Collaborate with friends on the details of the lie. I've heard that joke before, and that one was pretty funny. And that one I kind of have to side with the teacher. I don't know how many times the teacher has been lied to like that. Maybe the tests are that hard that students lie on a regular basis to get out of it like that, and that's what facilitated this test. Story 3. My English teacher admitted to marking down all my work by a grade because I think you could do better. Shrew, I was doing better, and you made it look like I wasn't. Caused me to stop even trying. My English teacher would give me 50% of every essay, presumably because she didn't want to read it and was going on reputation. So I decided to try really hard on all my essays for one semester and see if I could do better. I enlisted the help of my much smarter older sister to help me write all of my essays. A girl who had received 99% in this teacher's class in the past. Well, I still got 50% on every essay. So the last essay of the semester we worked long and hard on, and my sister was sure we would get a better mark. Shrew still gave me 50%. So my mom and sister went into the school and sat down with the teacher and principal and had it out with this teacher. She maintained that I was a 50% essay writer. In the English final, I got 80% on my essay with blind marking. Frack you, Ms. McDonald, you're a lazy shrew. I had that too in university. C or C- on every essay. Finally got my roommate who had an English lit degree to help me proofread my final essay and make suggestions. He was teaching the concurrent class, and I still got a C. That sort of reminds me of that Malcolm in the Middle class where show where Malcolm helped Reese with homework and it got marked down, and it just proved that the teacher had it out for Reese just because of who Reese was, apparently. That is really awful. So far, I'm not seeing any repercussions on any of these teachers at all. I really hope we find a story down the line where there is one. Story 4. 20 years ago, we had to make a diorama. We all had them sitting on tables in the classroom, and one day some other kid was messing around, fell into the table, and smashed mine. I failed the assignment for having a smashed diorama. You got an F because some kid was fooling around and destroyed all your hard work? The teacher didn't even tell you to redo it? Did the kid get punished? I don't remember if the kid got punished, but I remember it was the morning we were supposed to present them to the class, and the teacher was all, "Maybe you should have put it somewhere more secure. Now you're not ready for your presentation." And then said something about how this should be a lesson to everyone that in life, you have to have a backup plan for when things outside of your control ruin your plans. So you were supposed to have a backup diorama in your backpack or something? Would have been rich if they did that whole speech and the kid just pulled out another backup diorama. Wonder how teacher would react. Failed for being a smart mouth. If someone broke into your place of work in the middle of the night and destroyed your work computer, the company wouldn't fire you the next morning. What a douchebag. Story 1. When I was around 20 or 21, I was working as a barista. We had floor-to-ceiling windows on one side of our cafe in a busy area. Some guy, maybe mid-30s, was walking by outside, and it looked like he was coming into our store. We locked eyes, so I offered a half-hearted customer service smile, as one does. He turned the corner to the front of our store, blocked partially by a brick wall, no windows, but never came inside. I didn't think much of it and just continued on with my day. After about 3 or 4 hours later, my shift was over. I walked outside to the parking lot, and I heard a, "Finally, you're off work." I turned around, expecting to see a coworker or maybe a regular customer I was friends with or something. Nope. It was the guy I locked eyes with for 0.5 seconds several hours earlier. He was sitting at a table on our patio, but was blocked by the brick wall so I couldn't see him through the windows from inside the store. I was really startled and didn't know what to say. He then proceeded to tell me he saw me smile at him through the window, so decided to wait outside of my work for several hours so he could talk to me. I mean, it would be one thing to come into the store, buy a coffee and try to talk to me, although I still wouldn't appreciate that while at work. But this man waited outside of my work for several hours. I was so creeped out and made an excuse like, oh, actually, I'm just adjusting the umbrellas on the patio. I still have work. And then I went straight back inside and to the back where I waited a full hour until my coworkers confirmed he was gone. I was so scared and had male coworkers walk me to my car for like a week. Smart that you went back inside so smoothly. Women have to develop these skills starting at around age 11. A kind of similar thing happened to me. I was around 13 or 14 and was in the passenger seat of my dad's car. Smiled very briefly at a taxi driver next to us that I made eye contact with at a traffic light. He proceeded to follow us for what felt like 20 minutes. It went from dusk to dark in between time. I let my dad know, and he made a few random turns to confirm he was indeed following us. Did the whole reverse into a random driveway and flashed the high beams at him, and he disappeared. Can't even smile at someone, and yet we're all also told to smile more. It's not even just in bars. I did a summer job in a library, and a guy kept asking about my shifts. My male manager had to ask him to leave me alone. I guess he really managed that mail. Also gives off I've never actually had a good interaction with a woman before vibes. Who thinks this is all right? I mean, one could make the argument that men have trouble connecting with people regularly and sort of get confused about this. I'm not saying that this excuses this man's behavior. You need to be able to understand that what you're doing is really creepy. You're not sitting here waiting on a doctor's appointment or a job interview. You need to leave right away. That's awful. Story 2. When I was 19, I was a phone girl at a local pizza place. I would answer the phone and take people's order for carryout or delivery. One time, this guy called and said he was placing an order for delivery. By the end of the order, he changed his mind and said he wanted to order carryout. The dude shows up and my coworker helps him and he says, "You're not the girl I talked to on the phone. I want to talk to that girl." I realize he's talking about me and I ask what's wrong. He then tells me he thinks I have a really soothing voice and should do ASMR. I was like, okay, that's weird, but relatively harmless. The guy gets his food, then leaves. We can see him sitting in his car for like 15 minutes. Then he came back in the store with a map and started asking me a bunch of weird questions for directions to somewhere. I said, "Why can't you just use Google Maps? I see you have an iPhone," and point to his phone. Then, as I point, I see him try to hide the screen. He has the audio recorder pulled up. This weirdo came back in the store with a thinly veiled excuse of asking for directions because he was trying to record my voice. It was so creepy. I told him, "Wait 1 second," and went to the back and told some coworkers what was going on. A friend of mine who worked in the kitchen, a 6'2" musclehead, walked out and was like, "I'm great with directions. My girlfriend is terrible at them," while gesturing to me, "Let me help you." Suddenly, the guy didn't need directions anymore. So yeah, I'm going to say whatever that was creepy. I've been told I sound like a girl over the phone. People get so shocked when they arrive to pick up their order and to speak to the same girl they were talking to on the phone. As I get older, we shall see if that changes to me sounding like a woman, but every single customer has always said girl. I'm the exact opposite. Am actually a lady, but I've always had a deep voice, even as a kid, and constantly am mistaken for a guy over the phone. Even my higher-pitched customer service voice evidently just sounds like a gay man, whatever that's supposed to mean. There's unfortunately the very illegal version of deepfakes of guys that are desperate to have whatever woman they want in corn pictures. And with the ability to clone voices, this is like the audio version of that, with this guy trying to record this girl's voice. Especially when you can clone anybody's voice nowadays. That's actually quite a bit scarier now. Story 3. Sit next to you when you're the only two people in a place with many, many seats. If you go to Japan, you can experience the opposite effect, where the last two seats on the train to be filled with the ones next to you. In Korea, people will mash themselves into a densely packed sardine cube rather than sit next to a black person on a subway. My friend told me, my reflex is to be offended, but I love having the space. That's kind of hilarious and kind of sad at the same time. Good for your friend for having a sense of humor. This happened to me once on the bus. There were literally about 30 free seats. The genders were reversed, however, me as the guy and the other a random woman. I was so confused for a second, said, "Excuse me?" She let me out and I moved to a different seat. I was dumbfounded the rest of the day after that experience. Some people are just nuts. As an aside, I'm fascinated by the psychological effect of sitting next to someone in a full bus/room versus when it empties out. A few times the train is emptied out and I've been left next to one person with no one else around, and it's hugely uncomfortable, even though nothing has changed except the presence/proximity of other people. Once other people are gone, you're no longer sitting next to someone, you're sitting with them. And I feel this huge discomfort, like there's pressure to interact in some way, or there's forced intimacy. It's weird. The problem is that moving away might come across as rude, so most people just stick to their seats. This recently happened to me, and I must admit I was severely creeped out. 20 open seats, and you choose the seat directly next to me? Why? I'm a guy, and this annoys me. Hell, it annoys me when there are plenty of parking spaces and someone parks next to me. Same thing with urinals. Yeah, I just think it's like anything, with like planes, with buses, with everything. Everything's getting made smaller. And, like the seats are getting shorter and smaller, even in economy, and people get more and more crammed together, so it's just really annoying if you find yourself sitting next to someone. If there were more reasonable seats on the bus, maybe it wouldn't be so bad and everyone would have their space. Like actual space. Story 4. Not backing off when a woman indicates in any way whatsoever, verbally or physically, she isn't interested, yet they continue or think they can continue to harass you or change your mind. I genuinely have zero idea how there are guys out there with this much confidence. If I make anything that could be even considered as a move and I get rejected, then I'm getting as far away from that situation as I possibly can immediately and cringing about it in the shower/morning commute for years to come. The difference is that those people aren't generally looking for consent, just agreement. You get rejected and your reaction is, "Oh, smeg, well, she doesn't want me. Time to go." They get rejected and they lack a reaction to the rejection because the person they're going after's opinion is not relevant to their goal. I think it's also a really fracked up pride thing. Some people will take the sting and move on, whereas others simply think it's something you can battle through with persistence. Media hasn't helped, to be fair. Rom-coms are full of guys who can't take no for an answer, and eventually the girl relents. Yes, after soft rejection, because too afraid to actually reject, I hate it when they're like, "What, you don't even want to be my friend?" Like this whole interaction started with him hitting on me. Why would I think for a second that he just wants to be friends? Story 1. Flat Earth. Okay, so I took an intro to philosophy class in college. This is circa 2001, so flat Earth is not a big thing yet. Well, our professor says, "The Earth is flat. Prove me wrong." So everyone is going through the normal ways to prove it. And seeing as this was the professor's lesson, he had some, relatively speaking, decent arguments. By the end of class, I was thinking that he might actually believe the Earth is flat. But the lesson he was trying to give us was that all information we have came from someone else. NASA says there are satellites in orbit, but we don't know that. and even the math necessary to prove it's possible was passed to you from another person. Point was, he wanted to make sure everyone always had an awareness of where they were getting information from. Good sources first and foremost, but even good info gets outdated, so make sure it's still accurate. He then went on to list like 5 ways you can test in your backyard that the Earth is round. So it turns out he wasn't crazy, but I think about that class a lot. I worry that someone was trying to retell that lesson at Thanksgiving to their family, but they forgot how it was supposed to end, and accidentally got the Flat Earth smeg moving. If I recall correctly, there was a website for Flat Earth, but it was more of one of those don't believe everything you read on the internet kind of sites. I believe that was the general start to the whole thing, people taking it seriously. I could be wrong, though. I remember that it's a forum. I think it's called flatearth.org or something. The forum said that it was a debate training ground. The idea was, if you can defend such a ridiculous idea as saying that the Earth is flat, then you can defend anything. Little did we know. Flat Earth Society. One of the big things I remember was the penguins with laser eyes defending the ice wall surrounding the flat Earth from explorers. They have members all around the globe. First, I saw something about it that seemed to be the likes of 4chan making stupid memes like pics of spirit levels on the ground with "explain this" captions. Of course, some people have room temperature IQs and can't separate jokes from reality, and then I started seeing posts on Facebook and Twitter that didn't seem so jokey, and then it was posters and cars with stickers. That's the problem with any satire or ironic group like that. It starts with the original users acting the part, but it starts to get crazier and edgier. Then it slowly fills up with people that don't know it's a joke or use joke as a cover when called out. Finally, all the originals are gone, and you're left with a full-on, actual, unironically crazy group. So in 10 years, we're going to be having mainstream discourse about how birds aren't real and are just little drones for the CIA? Ah, man. In my high school forensics class, there was a girl that thought the Earth was flat. She tried to defend herself, but eventually went to, "I'm allowed to have my own opinion, so whatever." Our teacher turned around and said, "There's a difference between having an opinion and just being stupid," and went back to talking about unaliving or something. "I'm allowed to have my own opinion, so whatever." This kind of smeg annoys me to no end. It's like these people don't know what an opinion is. And went back to talking about unaliving, the one he just committed. This is what I hate about the whole birds aren't real thing. Sure, people see it as making fun of people like flat earthers, but how long before those people are outnumbered by ones who actually believe that birds are actually fake? You know, just like how it happened to flat earthers. You can find members of this society all around the globe. Well, it's true that knowledge changes as we discover new things. That's kind of part of the scientific method. You have an opinion or you have a theory and you test it out, and if that information disproves your theory, you change what you believe. But I just do not get how so many people are just going to believe that flat Earth is real. I just am kind of scared to delve into what arguments they have about it. Story 2. Dogecoin. I remember a Twixter post where someone asked the Dogecoin creator whether they thought about the environmental impact when creating this coin. He replied saying he took 2 hours to create the cryptocurrency and didn't consider anything. Love it. Reading this reminded me to check my app where I bought a few dollars worth of Dogecoin out of boredom. Its value has tripled in the last week. It's now worth tens of dollars. Honestly, have half a mind to sell it all and finally buy Cyberpunk on Steam. Do it now before this Elon guy tweets again. Elon DeGeneres? I always prefer to use his full name, Elongated Muskrat. Even the creator was surprised people took his coin seriously and said it was insane. Today it's worth $16 billion. I threw in $50 when it was barely at a penny just to see what would happen. I figured, yeah, it's a joke, but who knows? Maybe I can make a couple $100 if it drops. I'll only be down $50, no big deal. Then that smeg went to 75 cents. I didn't sell at the top, obviously, but when I did sell, I was up $2K in profit. But holy hell, just thinking about if I would have put more money in when I first got it, it's a little heartbreaking, to be honest. The first year the EITC was expanded to 3 children, I got a tax return of almost $8,000. I had noticed that Bitcoin was over $3. The last time I looked at it, it was only a few cents. I briefly considered buying 2,000 Bitcoin, but figured it would be back down to a few cents soon and I'd lose most of my money. If I had sold it at its peak, I'd have over $100 million. I'm not allowed to talk about this around my ex. I was among the first to mine Bitcoins. Somewhere in a landfill is my old computer with 150 to 200 Bitcoins that I mined before I came to the conclusion that this will just cost me time and money. I had 2 very large servers sitting under my desk at one point, and I had a choice. I could use them to mine Bitcoin or run SETI at home. You can take a guess which I chose, but I have a feeling that had I mined coins and then possibly lost or sold them super cheap, that it would have mentally eaten me up. Hopefully you've been able to not let it really get to you. I wonder if the future we're going to find people, archaeological people, digging and finding old hard drives and old USB sticks with this data on it. And if they do find that somehow it's some kind of Bitcoin, is it actually going to be worth anything, or are we just going to laugh and see it as a fad and just how much money and time was put into these little encrypted bits of ones and zeros? Story 3. The schools have litter boxes in bathrooms. The very idea that a litter box could be placed in a classroom with dozens of kids who all have cell phones and are social media addicts, and there's not a single photo or video of it, is laughably absurd. That's always my argument. If there was a single litter box in a single bathroom in a single school in the middle of nowhere, Utah, we'd have photos of it everywhere. It would be the biggest thing on the internet. And yet, somehow, we don't have a single shred of proof. Only, my friend's kid's friend said, and whatnot. They're trying to suppress it. If we can't find adult leakers with law enforcement, how the hell are overworked educators able to? When I initially heard about the litterbox thing, it was presented as an abusive teacher's story, not a student identified as a cat thing. I genuinely thought for a moment a teacher could be fracked up enough to make students use a litter box. Teachers have done worse, after all. But I looked into it before being outraged and right away saw it was a sham. I don't get why more people don't do that. There is an endless amount of real things to be upset about. Why focus on the clearly and verifiably fictional stuff? John Oliver recently ripped this talking point apart. Something along the lines of, if some kid took a smeg in a litter box in class in the morning, you would have heard about it from everyone and their mother by lunch, not some parrot on the local news at 6 p.m. I followed the local community Facebook page for the town where my sister and mom live, and they had 8 different pearl-clutching posts about this in the lead-up to school starting this year. All of them went the same way. Original person: my nephew said they have litter boxes for people who identify as cats. We need to get these crazy people out of our schools. Everyone else: did you talk to the principal? Is this actually true? Original person: no, but my 14-year-old nephew said so, and I can believe it because let's go Brandon. At a certain point, the principal was having to comment on each thread to get people to calm down. That's very true. If someone was using, there's just so much teasing and bullying in the restrooms. If someone was actually using a litter box in a restroom, yeah, it would be all over. There would have been pictures of it somewhere. And it's all just really just to distract from real issues. I mean, real issues of underfunded schools, underfunded kids' lunches, just a lot of there's a lot more about education that we could focus on improving in real issues.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.